Welcome all you average gamers back for another average review. As always, if you like this kind of content, leave a like and subscribe for more. This one is a tough one. I have wrote and rewrote this review a few times now. I really enjoyed this game in the beginning, and it almost felt like Assassin's Creed had gone back to its roots. It felt similar to the story of Black Flag and how a pirate looking for purpose in life ends up finding it in the Creed. So I assumed Eivor's story would be similar, but as we get into this video, I'll explain why it just wasn't. It seems every time I play this game, my opinion on the game seems to change. And I know that sounds crazy, but I do like the game, and I think at moments Valhalla is truly a spectacle to experience. My last review, I gave Miles Morales a numerical score, but I don't think going forward I'll ever really be given a numerical score again. I think rather I'd give you like a recommendation, wait for a sale, or stay the fuck away from this one. I'm going to try and keep a lot of the moment-to-moment critiques objective, but with any review, this is my opinion, and you may disagree or agree, and if you do, voice your opinion in the comments below. So where to start? Well, I guess I'll start with what I think is the easiest category to talk about, the combat. The combat, like most of this game, has highs and lows. I've never really been a huge fan of hitbox-based combat, but I do believe even with some of the jank, it's a decent and fun combat system. They added a stamina bar, similar to Souls-like games, but nowhere near as deep. Especially because out of any Assassin's Creed game I've played, this combat is just so damn easy. Like, I think I only died 3 times, maybe, in the whole game, and one of those being diving from a cliff that was just a little too high. The only other deaths were from zealots, but they're kind of unbalanced in my opinion and are on a whole different level than the other bosses, just purely based on their aggression. So I left them alone till the end game and got through them pretty easy at that point. Most of the abilities are overpowered and adrenaline is far too easy to gain, so you can finish bosses that are far above the player's level. Bosses in the game are the most boring yet, except for the Daughters of Lyrion. They felt amazing. They gave me an actual challenge, mainly due to the magic that they use. And the magic that they use is just poison. The story behind it is right before each fight they poison you, and that's why it looks all trippy, kind of like the Seer's hut. But we'll get more onto that later on in the review. So overall, the combat is fun, but far too easy. But that could be due more to the progression rather than the moment-to-moment combat. Still, to this day, I will proudly say that Unity has the best combat out of any Assassin's Creed game. I actually died in that game and had to think on how to go at objectives and different assassination targets rather than just hacking and slashing. But I don't really need to do any of that in this game. Especially if, like me, you tend to do side content before the main content. This game will basically punish you by making the game too easy. I mean, I don't know. Some people like an easy game, but whatever. Do not do that in this game. I played on the hardest difficulties for stealth and combat, and it was just a breeze all the way through. Next, we will discuss story. Wow, this fucking story. It's like if someone took a dictionary and inserted 4 5-page stories that were absolutely amazing inside, randomly, and then told you that the rest of the dictionary is a mandatory read to find those 4 amazing stories. There are parts of the story and the game that are truly breathtaking, and I don't just mean the graphics. This game looks amazing. The environmental artists at Ubisoft deserve every fucking award we can give them. They create worlds so meticulously detailed that universities use them to study ancient civilizations, specifically origins in ancient Egypt. The game truly carried me through just how amazing it looked, at least for a little while. But back to the story. The story is just all over the place. I felt the pacing in Norway in the first parts of the game was on point, but as soon as you get to England, it just becomes a slog. There are these story arcs that are required to complete to be able to get to the good stuff, like the story of the Creed, the Isu, the betrayal between Eivor and Sigurd in the modern day story. But instead, there are tens of hours of unimaginative story arcs that have to be completed to be able to see through any of these exciting arcs. Now, what is and isn't entertaining, or what is and isn't good, is completely subjective, and I understand this, and a lot of you may disagree, but this game was about 40 hours too long, and a lot of the arcs optional, so we could have continued with the main plot. 3 of the arcs in the game are the exact same. 3 members of the Order have infiltrated the town's officials, and they need to be rooted out and eliminated. That's nearly 15 to 20 hours of repeated plots. Basically just wasted time, fluff. On their own, none of these story arcs are bad, and some of them are even entertaining or touching at times. But most have no relation to the main story, other than in the end you have more allies. I will give credit where credit is due. There are moments where the game really shines and reminds me I'm playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, not just Valhalla. I absolutely love Vikings and Norse mythology, and being able to visit Asgard in another game other than God of War was amazing, and it looks freaking stunning. But that's not why I play Assassin's Creed. I play to fulfill the fantasy of being an assassin. Even the marketing pushed Viking fantasy, not the assassin, which I thought I wanted, but about 50 hours in, I realized it's not. I miss my Assassin's Creed games I grew up with. There's a reason why in 2020 Unity was the most searched and viewed AC game, even more so than Valhalla, because there are a lot of old school fans that miss the same old Assassin's Creed we grew to love. Alright, well, enough ranting and back to the point. Let me wrap this up. I do believe the game ends on a high note, especially with the modern day. That was actually the only arc that I felt wasn't super predictable. I was let down by the father of the Order. The black silhouette kind of gave him away from the very beginning, since he is the only character model that looks anything like the silhouette. Now, no spoilers, so don't worry, I won't give it away, but you'll see if you decide to play. The Isu story by far is the best part of the game. I have some theories on how the Isu and the old gods relate, and why reliving Odin's life through the memories accessed in the Seer's hut, you see it as Asgard, and not how it actually is. And I believe that's not purely Odin's memories, but Eivor's imagination merging with the memories of Odin. So, all in all, the game ends on a high note, but it takes far too long to get there, and now hopefully my dictionary metaphor makes a little more sense to y'all. So all in all, what do I think of the story? Well, I think 25% of the story is amazing. And it's a great Assassin's Creed plot that reminds me of the old days. Another 60% of the story is just, well, good story on its own, and should have been in a game where it could have been appreciated a little more. The last 15% is basically just fluff and forgettable. For lack of better words, just trash. Now the gameplay, I touched on a bit during the combat section, but I want to expand on it a little and talk about the structure of the exploration and side content and the parkour system. I'll start with parkour because it's simple. It sucks. It's terrible, it's a mess, it's boring. It's mainly what has ruined the franchise for me as of late. The boring ass rail system they have used for parkour since Origins has not changed. Neither has my opinion on it. Does it get the job done? Sure. But wow, all the flash from the first 3 games and Unity are gone. I assumed it was going to stay the same, but I had hoped with other features from the game's past returning, like social stealth, that maybe they would touch up on the parkour. But since they are so focused on combat rather than stealth, parkour will always be pushed to the side. At least I believe. Now the side content is pretty cool. The drinking games, Orlog, brawls, and marksman challenges are simple but fun. I really enjoyed Orlog. Orlog is a pretty simple dice game that is based mainly on luck, like any other dice game. But there is some depth to it. Nothing like Gwent from The Witcher 3, but there are collectibles with God's favors that you can change in and out between matches to strategize. Each player has a set of health, 3 God's favors, and 6 die to roll. Each die has a shield, helmet, hand, arrow, and axe on it, and 2 of those sides also have a yellow border. Each die with a yellow border that is rolled is called a God's Favor, and with enough God's Favors, you can choose one to unleash on your opponent. Honestly, God Favor is all that matters. What happens with the other die, round to round, rarely have consequence. The side missions are, well, okay. They aren't bad at all, but none of them are particularly memorable. Except the egg mission, where an old woman in the sewer asks you to bring her viper eggs over and over again until eventually she farts and stinks out the whole town. Now, that's not a good side mission, or even funny. But every damn reviewer has picked this story to highlight the side missions, whether good or bad. Personally, I think they are just kind of so-so, like how the miscellaneous missions are in Skyrim. The environment is absolutely fucking stunning. I truly can't say a single negative to the environment design. Even the cities have been built with parkour in mind, which is just so refreshing to see. Exploration is pretty much the same as any Ubisoft open world game. A bunch of points on the map, but nothing more but pretty set pieces in between. There is no real exploration. Now that being said, there are some differences from the other two Witcher 3 clones. Assassin's Creed RPGs. In the way the map and the POIs are laid out. Instead of a bunch of symbols all over the map and each symbol having a meaning so you can decide which ones you want to do or collect and which ones you don't, well, in Ubisoft's infinite wisdom, they decided to change those symbols into dots and those dots into 3 color categories. Blue for side missions or mysteries, white for collectibles, and yellow for wealth or currency to upgrade in the game. At first thought, cool, this sounds interesting. Finally, I'll feel like I'm exploring rather than just checking things off the list. But nope, it's exactly the same. Now I can't decide. Now instead, I can't decide which dots I want to visit. I have to visit them all to unlock the dot and see what type of content or collectible it is. Then decide whether or not to do it. But I'm already here. I already wasted 10 minutes walking or riding a horse to said dot, so fuck it, I'll do it. I miss the days of Morrowind and other RPGs that didn't have quest markers and you had to actually use your brain to discover things. Games are just so fucking simple now, and it's sad. This is why we are getting more and more remasters rather than original IP, because the old games just nailed it, except they look like doo-doo. But enough of that, back to the Creed. All in all, this wasn't a bad game. A few last critiques, then on with whether or not I recommend this game to y'all. This was the buggiest Assassin's Creed game I played at launch, other than maybe Unity. But that game pushed the limits and was ambitious, where Valhalla seems lazy and trope chasing, so the bugs are unforgivable. The post content is garbage and filled with bugs that are more game breaking than the ones that shipped with the game. There are more microtransactions to purchase armor than there are ways to earn armor in the game. So I see how some of my friends are able to ignore these things and spend hundreds of hours in the game. But I just can't. I can't. They eat at my soul. I hate greed. So after all that, you're probably wondering if I would recommend this game. Well, yes. Yes, I would. But maybe not to a die-hard Assassin's Creed fan. There are moments for you, absolutely. But there's so much filler and fluff in between that it's hard to find those key moments that are amazing. Now, maybe wait for a sale is probably my best recommendation for you guys. If you're just coming into the franchise or you just started with Odyssey, I'm sure you're going to enjoy this game a lot. But if you've been playing it like I have since Assassin's Creed 1, it's just another so-so. Basically, Ubisoft threw Assassin's Creed on a box to sell, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel like Assassin's Creed anymore. Unfortunately, I don't believe we'll ever get another true AC game. Ubisoft wants to reach too wide an audience and profit too much off microtransactions to ever go back to its roots and figure out what made a niche, smaller budget game as Assassin's Creed 1 blow up and become the second highest selling franchise, losing only to Call of Duty. So for me, as a longtime fan of the franchise, this may be my last Assassin's Creed game. Looking back at the last 3 Witcher clones, I can say they are a pretty good game, and even amazing at points, but they're just terrible Assassin's Creed games. This being the best of the 3, but also being the buggiest and most unfinished. I don't have a lot of hope for the future of this franchise, especially since the new formula seems to sell so well. This has been a Most Average Gaming with another average ass review. If you like the comment, leave a like and consider subscribing. If not, leave a comment on what we could do better on the channel. Thanks for all the support. I'm out. Best of luck, best of health, and go make some average plays.